So his comment reads, being both hesitant and honest and direct like I am doesn't seem to be a combination a lot of women can wrap their heads around. Well, it's not really that they can't wrap their heads around it. It's just that you got to figure with women, you're dealing with feelings-based people that primarily work off of their feelings. All right. And so they're looking to connect with you in ways that are basically taking them on a journey of building their feelings for you. You being direct with them doesn't allow them to have that journey. So when you're being hesitant, for one, that's delaying you getting to know her and delaying you approaching her. And then you get to her after all this time and you're like, hey, so I just want to know that I want you to know that I really like you. I'm being honest and direct about it. There's been nothing there that has allowed her to build up the feelings that she's going to need to be able to reflect those feelings back to you. All right. So that's where a lot of this issue is probably occurring. Continuing, he says, I can wait for weeks in the gym, for instance, before I finally approach a girl. This is a situation that I did back in college where I would meet a woman and then I would be friends with her for 3 or 4 months thinking if she gets to know me or if she sees me enough times, then she'll eventually have a like for me, at which point then I'll strike. And what I found is that it is better to strike early on. When you first notice her across the room or across the gym and you see her looking back a couple of times, that is when you have the best chance of making a move that's going to eventually lead towards her having feelings for you. You delaying that is only going to allow those potential little tinglings of feelings that she may have had for you to start to dissipate over time, to whereby when you approach her, she's going to be like, this dude's approaching me now. Like, this is kind of weird because he's been coming here for 3 months and hasn't approached me. Now he wants to approach. Like, that's going to be an odd exchange for a woman, you know? But anyway, so he says he'll wait for weeks before he finally approaches the girl. He says there will have been signs of interest on both sides during this time, such as repeated eye contact, etc. Now, this is a problem that a lot of guys have where you will have an interest in a woman and your feelings for her are so strong that you're now looking for signals that indicate she must feel the same way. So you're looking at her and she's looking back and you're thinking, oh, that must mean she likes me. Oh my God. But you're projecting your interest onto her. Now, could it be that she also has a budding interest in you? It could be, but if you're not approaching her, that doesn't matter. The main thing is that when you're starting to feel things, you're going to project on your high interest to this girl. And the reality is that just because you have a high interest doesn't mean that she has a high interest, and you won't get to know at what level her interest could either be at or potentially grow to until you actually approach her. So what we do is we'll be thinking, okay, I'm seeing a couple months of signals. She's looking at me. I'm looking at her. I go to this treadmill machine and then she gets on the same treadmill machine next to me. Like, these must be signs. And you don't actually know what's going on in her head. She could be looking at you like, hey, this guy's looking at me kind of weird, but in society, women are socialized to be friendly. So she's going to have a friendly look on her face while thinking, this guy's creeping me out. Now, she could also be thinking that guy's really kind of attractive, but even if she's thinking that, she's thinking, and he's not approaching me, but he's just looking at me, this is now kind of creepy. So either way, you don't win when you see a woman and don't approach her, because if you don't approach and you decide you want to do it later on, she's going to be creeped out. If you see her and you're thinking you're waiting for her to approach, well, that's her taking the masculine lead, and that's never going to happen because most women don't want to do that. So once again, you're going to lose out versus being able to take the bold step of just walking up to her and starting some kind of conversation. But we'll get into that because he says, I don't want to bother someone before I'm sure there is genuine interest and not just some need for validation. Now, this is the thing that a lot of guys will say. They'll say that, I don't want to basically add to her self-esteem by trying to get her number or tell her that she's pretty or compliment her or ask her on a date, because if I do that and get rejected, I don't get what I want, which is I wanted to go out with her, but she gets what she wants, which is validation. Dude, I'm going to tell you right now, anytime you approach a woman and try to talk to her and get her number, you're validating her. And there's nothing wrong with that, because if you ask for the number, that means she's getting validation that you must have some kind of feelings for her. If she says yes to that and gives you the number, that means she's now validating you and saying, I see you as a viable enough candidate to want to continue this interaction further. So there's nothing wrong with the validation process. I think guys have it twisted because they think in today's world of Instagram and Facebook and getting all these kind of likes that women are just out here just hoping guys will like them, but not wanting to actually get with them. But women are still horny. Women are still women and want relationships. They want community. They want to get with a guy that they can trust fully. And so, yeah, you're going to be validating her if you ask her out. But you know what? She might actually be a woman that ends up legit liking you. So you have to get past this part of like validation is a bad thing. Everybody in this world wants validation. The people that don't get validation are the ones that end up doing harmful things to people at schools and stuff like that, or like harming themselves. Like validation is healthy. What you don't want is somebody that's narcissistically trying to get validation, where they are the ones that are like, oh my God, he liked me. Oh, such a pig, but I got my like. But you have to learn how to read out women that are all about just strictly getting attention versus ones that are nice women, but realistically want their guy that's going after them to like them and think that they're pretty. Nothing wrong with that. So when you're approaching women in the gym in particular, like the other thing too is that men hold back because they think a woman needs to have full interest in them before he can approach. But if you really think about it, how backwards is that? Because you're saying, okay, until this girl fully likes me, I'm not going to approach. How is she supposed to get to know you? Just looking at you and saying, oh, I'm looking at him. He looks like he might be my type. Oh, I'm building interest. We as men typically get our interest in women by their looks, just how we biologically program. So you see a hot girl with the right curves, boom, you're already heavily invested. And it's not that women don't value looks to some extent, because we've all heard about like the 6-pack abs and the 6 foot and yada, yada, yada. And I'll tell you right now, I'm 5'10". I can say that it's categorically not true for the majority of women. Like if a woman could have her choice between a 6 foot dude that's just kind of or a 5'10", 5'7" dude that would treat her well and she can have a good time with, they will go with the option that's going to treat them well more often than not. Not that I'm saying it doesn't happen, but more often than not, that's the situation. Okay. So, but to that point is that, again, genuine interest. She needs to be able to have a conversation with you. She needs to be able to talk to you. She needs to be able to start establishing feelings of trust and connection before she can have a full genuine interest. This is why I tell you guys it takes 2 to 3 months for a woman to solidify her feelings, because by that 3rd month, she now has a full-fledged genuine interest. So you can't go off of because you have a genuine interest after looking at her one time that until she has that also by looking at you, that you're not going to do that, because how are you going to read that? You can't read it. So recognize that there are women out there. Women start at a baseline of like, basically when they meet you, their baseline is cool dude. He could either potentially be a relationship or potentially be a friendship, but I have no judgment yet because I need more evidence. And so as you talk to them, as you make them laugh, as you take them out, as they are able to hear stories about your family life, and as they're able to get to know you, they'll start going, oh, I want to put him more in the relationship phase. But you have to be the one to initiate that. The way you're trying to go with this woman is with the relationship. So your genuine interest is what's going to spark her thinking about possibly being able to go out with you and saying yes to your dates. And that's what you want. You should be more focused on, is this woman going to give me her number and say yes to my dates? That's all you want for that first time. You don't have to worry about, is she genuinely interested? If nothing else, she'll be genuinely curious about what you could possibly bring to her life and what she can bring into yours. But that's all she's going to know, especially if you're meeting her in a place like the gym where she sees dudes all the time. Just real talk. Anyway, he says, I simply don't like bothering women when they are concentrating on their activities and the general climate isn't exactly beneficial. When I then finally do approach, I assume I don't have to make up some slick excuse to make contact, since an underlying silent understanding is already there. Again, you're the one that's saying that you feel as though there's an underlying silent understanding. And to a woman's credit, like, they typically pick up on things without having to be said. But that does not mean that you assuming she has an underlying interest is actually there. She might know that you have an underlying interest, but that doesn't mean that she actually has one. The only way you get to know that is to eventually approach, have a conversation, and then ask her for her phone number. That's how you figure out if there's some kind of either underlying interest or some kind of underlying curiosity. And to be honest, you may see a woman in the gym that you think is looking at you and really has been like looking past you or has been like not noticing you, to where you approach her, you're thinking, oh, well, we've been having this rapport for months without talking to each other because of our looks and our glances and being next to each other. And she could very well be like, I didn't know what, sometimes I just stare into space Sometimes there's somebody behind you that I'm actually waving at. Sometimes I'm just sitting there thinking about the thing I got to do at work, and I just happen to be looking your direction. Like, you don't know. So I don't want you to go in assuming. That's the big thing that shoots guys in the foot, is assuming things with a woman. I assume she's not interested. I assume that she needs to have a genuine interest to like me. I assume that because we looked at each other weird for 2 months, that she must have an underlying interest. Stop assuming and go ahead and make the move to approach, and stop delaying it, because when you delay it, it just makes it creepier in the long run. All right. Some slick excuse. Also, he says thing about he doesn't want to have to make us some slick excuse. Dude, let's be real. All right. Most women, if you try to approach them in a direct way, like just go up to them and saying, hey, so just so you know, I really like you and I've been watching you for 2 months and I think we should go out. Does that sound like the kind of honest, direct phrase that's going to make a woman want to go out with you? It's probably not. So you have to understand the dance and ebb and flow of attracting women. All right. Women are ultimately looking for the story, because any love story that she gets into, she's going to want to tell her girlfriend. So let's go with your story, right? How does this work? She goes to her girlfriend's. How'd you meet the guy? Well, we were at the gym and he looked at me for 2 months. And then one day he came to me and said, I find you attractive and I want to take you out. It's an okay story, but it's very, very boring. Now let's look at the alternative, which was, hey, how'd you guys meet? Well, it's funny. There was this guy that was at the gym and, I'd seen him on and off a couple of times, but, nothing really popped off. And then I was going to get a drink and he happened to be behind me and he started asking me about my drink. And the next thing I know, I was telling him about my drink, and then he was, telling me about some of the drinks that he likes. And then we were having a banter back and forth, and I just found him to be really, really funny and vibrant. And I just had this, I was feeling this vibe with him. And then the next thing I know, I'm just like, we had a really good combo for a little bit, and then he went away and worked on some machine, and then came back at the end and said, hey, it's really nice to meet you, blah, 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 blah. And then he just said, hey, real quick, if you want to, meet outside the gym, let me get your number real quick. And then I said, you know what? I'm not usually this kind of girl to do that, but I'll just go ahead and give it a shot. And so I gave him my number, and then, he didn't contact me for a few days. So I was wondering, maybe I didn't really attract him the way that I thought I did. But then he hit me up on day 4 and was like, hey, I want to really take you out. And then, and that starts the story. And that is a journey of a story that she explains how she was able to justifiably build up her feelings for you to where she wanted to go out with you and gave you the number. And that's the story that a woman's going to want to tell her girlfriends. So your whole direct thing is cutting that story on top of when dudes are direct. You think you're coming across as perfectly fine being direct. A lot of guys, when they are adamantly direct to a woman, when they're trying to ask her out, they come off as creepy and needy and at times desperate. And it's better to be able to build a vibe and a feeling with the woman than to be so direct to where she has no context for what you're possibly feeling or what your motivation is behind even doing this in the first place. And then she's like, I'm not interested. All right. We'll talk more about that in a minute, though. So then he says, still, women seem to need this vague, indirect way of contact making even then. It's not that I'm not able to do it this way. In fact, I'm very good at it, but I deeply dislike it. In all your videos, this need to communicate with women in an indirect way seems to be an underlying principle, and I'm sure you're absolutely right about it. Yet, a lot of us guys don't really like it. It might be one of the reasons some of us struggle with women. We don't lack the ability, but we simply don't like the vague dynamic. Well, this is absolutely true. I do talk about in a lot of my videos, including the one I'm just making now, about how it's better to kind of be a little bit indirect, not in terms of you wanting to go out with her, but in terms of your initial approach. It's kind of like coming in through the side door. Like most guys are trying to go front forward. Hey, what's up, beautiful? Hey, it's hot, gorgeous stuff, blah, 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 blah. If you go off to the side by a little bit of indirect conversation, or you come in by talking about something in the atmosphere, which then leads to, asking her about her likes and her life in general, and then all that stuff. And then it's like you're building up things. But here's the thing, because, it's not that I don't get annoyed by this stuff. Because, I'm a guy also, and even the years that I've been dating, I still get annoyed when, because I can read this stuff now. I can read when a woman is saying or doing something that's passive that she wants me to ask more about it, for example. Like, let's say a woman that I'm with is watching a funny video on YouTube, and I might do my own thing, right? And if they go oh, that's so funny. Now, I know at that point, she probably wants me to ask her, oh, what's so funny? What are you looking at? Right? Now, she could just tell me, hey, Harry, this is so funny. This video that I'm watching is blah, 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 blah. But why don't they do that? It's because they're being passive in part because women are trying to be very, very nice, right? So they don't want to, impede upon if I'm not going to be interested in things she's actually looking at. But she's also looking to see if I'm going to care enough to want to actually ask about the thing that she's looking at and the thing that's currently got her entertained. And that's going to show that I care about her feelings, and what she's into. And so indirect conversation is basically a smart man's game, because it gives the idea to a woman that you have intuition. You're intuitive enough to know her thoughts, to know how to build a vibe, to know how to connect with her, to know how to build up the feelings she needs to feel. And when you're able to do that in the positive way, it's going to make the woman feel more safe. So you got to think of it like this, right? The same way we get annoyed with women because we got to do this indirect communication. Think about the annoyances that women experience when we're trying to be so direct with them. Like guys that are coming up to them saying, "Hey, hot stuff, you're so pretty. Let me take you out." Why is that annoying to women? For one, there's no context behind it. So she doesn't understand the feeling tone as to why you're doing that and what your actual intentions are. On top of, you're not going there trying to build a vibe with her. You're going there to try to get what you want, which is not taking into consideration what she may be feeling, what she may be thinking, the kind of things that she needs in a relationship. You're not taking into account the tone of what's going on and how to build a vibe with her. And in the world of women amongst other women are great at this. They know how to get down to deeper subjects, but it starts with kind of having this filler banter and then going into a level where it's kind of like asking semi-provocative, but not too provocative questions, and then going deep down into like the more personal stuff. So women's ebb and flow of doing that is amongst themselves is very well established. So when you go in and say, "Hey, hi, hot stuff, I want to date you," recognize that in her world, that's not how communication is, because it's kind of rude. You're trying to go for the deep dive, and you haven't even built up enough of a vibe with her for her to feel like this is even a warranted question. Like you're going to go to a party and meet this girl and then just straight up say, "Hey, I want to take you out, blah, 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 blah," versus like spending time at the party to talk to her, to get to know her, to really establish a kind of vibe and feeling with her, to where by the end of the party, you can say, "Hey, real quick, let me get your number." And I used to be the king of getting numbers at parties, because I would usually point out like one or two women that I really found attractive, and I would like circle around for about an hour just talking to other people, doing other things. And then eventually I'd find a way to segue myself near that person. I'd start kind of a side conversation talking about something in the atmosphere, and then I find out if they want to talk to me, they'll comment on it as well. Next thing you know, we're in a conversation talking about the atmosphere, which leads to talking about the music, talking about the kind of music they like, which leads to like, "Oh, where are you from?" and all sorts of stuff. Next thing you know, we're building a vibe. They're sitting on my lap, and now at the end of the party, "Hey, let me get your number," and then we're going out. And it's all because I didn't go in directly. I knew my target, but I didn't go for it right away. I waited and did the things I needed to do on a side quest to be able to complete the mission, so to speak. All right. So just like we find it annoying when we have to be incommunicado with them, and we have to be indirect, and it feels like a trick. It feels like a trick for us because that's not our natural way of communicating, especially amongst other guys. We're used to being very direct because we're trying to get things done. But with our directness, we take the emotion out of our communication. You're trying to now connect with a woman who is a person that is mostly feelings based, and you're trying not to build any kind of feelings or rapport before you get to ask for your request for a number. Like, that's not going to work, guy. But here's the thing, because I know men get annoyed when women aren't direct with them. Here's the thing. A woman has to build up enough trust with you to be able to feel as though she can be as direct as possible. Because in the world of girl, if they are too direct, they're getting called the B word. They're getting called, hard to deal with. They're being seen as that woman that's just, she thinks she's better than everybody else. So women amongst themselves train themselves not to be so direct. So when she comes to you early on, she's probably not going to be as direct as you want her to be. And that's totally fine. She needs time to build up that trust. Now, at the point that you've helped build up that trust, then you can start directing her in ways that A, she can be direct with you, and that B, you're not going to punish her for doing so. Because her main concern is that she's going to be punished if she tries to come at you directly. And let's be real, guys. There have been women in relationships that try to go to their man and try to say, "Hey, I want to directly tell you about a complaint I'm having," and yada, yada, yada. And the men get butthurt. So we also train them to not be direct. So you got to give a woman a little leniency, and you have to give her time to practice being direct with you. And more importantly, when you're giving her that practice, you can't overreact to her doing it, because that's going to push her further back into not wanting to be as direct. But in terms of the pickup phase of things, yeah, you're going to be better going in indirect and not straight to her face. I know it's going to be annoying as heck, but hey, ultimately, do you want to date women or not? If you're going to date women, it's going to be better to know how they communicate and be able to communicate in the way that's beneficial to them. And then later down the line, you can start adding in ways for her to use your style of communication so you guys end up in an even balance. All right.
Call this beat Will Smith, cause it slaps hard. Hear it not when I pull up on your boulevard.